Hey crafty friends, it's Rick. I'm back with another video. Today we're going to make a Diamond Stair Step Fun Fold card using the Trickster Ghost Stamp Set and coordinating dies from Scrappy Boy Stamps, as well as the Trickster Ghost Pattern Paper Pack. So we are going to get started and we'll talk about everything you're going to need. We're going to need a piece of 5.5 by 11 inch piece of cardstock, whatever color you want. I chose black to go with our theme. And we're going to place this on the 11-inch side in a scoreboard. And we are going to score at 3 inches, 6 inches, 7.5, 9 inches, and 10 inches. So again, on the 11-inch side, that's 3 inches, 6 inches, 7.5, 9, and 10. So we'll take that out of our scoreboard, and we are going to fold this up. So we're going to take this back part, and we're going to fold it like a mountain. Okay? That's going to be the biggest part of your box. I'm going to take and flip this over. I'm going to flip our next score line up like a valley. And then our next score line is going to be a mountain. Our next one is a valley. And our last fold is the mountain. So you have a mountain, valley, mountain, valley, mountain. Okay? So it should look like that. It's regular stair step. Now, we have a 2 3/4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock for the back. That's so you can write on. And then we'll talk about all of our other little pieces here. All right, for our pattern paper, we have a 1 3/4 by 5 1/4 piece, a 1 1/4 by 5 1/4 piece, and a 2 3/4 by 5 1/4. So it's 3 3/4, 1 1/4, and 2 3/4. It's going to be our pattern paper. Those matte layers for that are going to be 2 7/8 and by 5 3/8, 1 3/8 by 5 3/8, and 7 8 by 5 1/8. Lord of mercy, that is a mouthful. Those are those matte layers for our diamonds. For our diamonds, we have a 2.5 by 2.5 inch piece of cardstock. Black cardstock, 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, and a 3 by 3 square for an all in black. And then we have a piece of white that's 2 7/8 by 2 7/8. We have a piece of black that's 3.5 by 2.5 by 2.5. A piece of pattern paper that's 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. And Rick forgot a piece of pattern paper. It needs to be 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. I'm going to move these out of the way for a second. And we're going to go ahead and layer up these pieces. I'm going to start with that 2 3/4 by 5 1/4 piece. So our mat for that is 2 7/8 by 2 and 5 3/8. So 2 7/8 by 5 3/8. We will add our 2 3/4 inch by 5 1/4 inch piece of pattern paper to our matte layer. I will go ahead and take this. I'm going to add liquid glue to that. And it's going to go on this back panel right here. Just giving it just the tiniest little bit of a margin. Just like so. All right, our 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 piece of pattern paper. We're going to mat that on a 1 3/8 by 5 3/8 piece of white cardstock. So I'll add liquid glue to that. Like so. We got our 3/4 by 5 1/4 and 7/8 by 5 3/8. matte layer. I'll add those. So this piece, our bigger piece now, is going to go in this middle section right there. So we'll add that. And I do have another version of this card to show you in just 1 second. When we get close to being done, I'll go ahead and show you that. Our last part goes on this. I used some more of the pattern paper plus one of the other images from the stamp set to make an example to share with y'all. Okay, so there is our base almost complete. All right, our 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 piece gets matted to our 2 7/8 by 2 7/8. So we'll mat that on there. And that gets matted onto our 3 by 3 inch square. Now, if you have a directional pattern, you're going to want it to go, like if you were using the Beatles, for example, and they go across, you're going to want to cut that pattern paper where it's going to be able to look right when it's turned on a diamond. Because it's going to get turned just like that. That plaid, it really doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to save this 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 for a minute. Because we're going to do a little stamping. We've got our 2 1/2 by 2 1/2. So I'm going to take my 2 1/4 inch piece of pattern paper. And I'm going to layer that on the center of that square right there. Now I have a 2 1/2 by 2 1/2 piece of white and our 2 3/4 by 5 1/4 piece of white. We're going to stamp on both of these. So I'm going to pull in my Misty, because we're going to stamp our sentiment and an image on this. So I'm going to do the little Saturn worm, I think is what it is. And then for a sentiment on the back, because we want room to still be able to write a little message, I'm going to put "You're strange and usually awesome." And I'm actually going to stamp those using a green ink. There's that. I'll move this to the side. And then I can take my little diamond, place it on a diamond. I'm just going to line it up where the points are correct. I do my outside sentiment first. Stamp that, get a good impression with it. Then I'm going to shift this up to the top so that I can add one of my images. So we'll stamp him. Sandworm, that's what I was thinking of, guys. Now, I did go ahead and stamp and colored my outside image as well before we got going today so that we could save a little time. So I'm going to use my coordinating die and cut that out so we can finish up our card design, our little Funfo card. All right, let's finish up our card. So we've got our outside sentiment. We're going to go ahead and add that. So I'll add some liquid glue on our back of that. We'll pop that onto its matte layer. Just kind of make sure your points are lined up. All right, we can flip this over and we can go ahead and add our back where our personal message or stamping can go. So we'll add that back there. Then we'll open our card up. And this is going to go right in there, and we're going to put it all the way down. So we're just going to kind of line it up equally in the center. Make sure our points are even, and that we're even on this side. Then I'll fold that up for our next section. And I will take and flip that over so that I have that lined up. And I know where to add my adhesive, which is the main part, is to know where to add that adhesive. Now I'm going to line this up with this point and this point lined up in that little diamond right there. Try to get that in our matte layer. It's what I want to line up, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm just going to line it up right even with that. And then for our last one, it's going to go right there. I'm going to line it up right at the edge of our matte layer for our second diamond. Make sure we have that in there. I'm just going to line that up, centered between that point. Just like so. Now we can add our little character to the center of that. So I'm going to pop him up with some foam adhesive. So I'll add a couple foam adhesive squares, dots, whatever. Whatever you got. Peel those backings off. And then I'm going to line that up right there in the center. Make it even. I'm going to add a few highlights on him with my gel pen. All right, so there is my first card, or there is the card. You can see how it steps up. Then there's a look at the back. Here is a look at the first version I made of it using the Lydia stamp and some different pattern paper. If you like this video, you're probably going to like the one coming up right over there. I'll see you in that video. Bye, guys. Stay crafty. Love you.